This episode is brought to you by pastasworld.com, where you can find jigsaw puzzles, coffee and tea mugs, canvas and poster prints, iPhone cases, and more. You can even order custom items with your own pictures. Go to pastasworld.com or the Pastas World shop on Etsy to learn more.
You're listening to I Love This TV Show, The Golden Girls.
Hi, and welcome to the I Love This TV Show podcast. I'm your host, Noelle from pastasworld.com. Each season of this podcast will contain a TV show in full. This means the length of the season depends on the length of the TV show. The first season is, of course, The Golden Girls. The Golden Girls, Season 1, Episode 25, The Way We Met. Rose is in the kitchen in the dark. Dorothy comes in and turns on the light, scaring her half to death. Rose: Dorothy, what do you mean sneaking up on me like that? You scared me half to death. Dorothy: Sorry, Rose. Next time I walk into a dark room in the middle of the night, I'll send a mariachi band ahead of me. Rose is awake because she heard a strange noise. She thought she heard someone walking upstairs, though they don't have any stairs. Dorothy thought she heard a prowler, but it was actually a cat trying to mate with their flamingo. Dorothy points out they should not have watched Psycho. Dorothy states that she has avoided the movie for 25 years. She prefers her mother-in-law. She's less scary. Dorothy: Norman Bates is scarier than my mother-in-law, and a much better dresser. Blanche agrees watching it was a mistake. That's why she prefers not to shower alone. Blanche: It always upsets me, especially that shower scene. Why, it's the reason I prefer not to shower alone. Dorothy: Sure, Blanche, and Goldilocks and the Three Bears is why you prefer not to sleep alone. Dorothy points out that being wide awake and scared is not fun. Rose, however, has a cheesecake in the freezer to fix it all. Blanche tells them she had two eccentric old ladies that flossed each other's teeth as her roommates prior to Rose and Dorothy, but she kicked them out and went to the supermarket to advertise to get new roommates. She met Rose there. Blanche asks Rose if she's okay. She thinks that Rose's husband or boyfriend dumped her. Rose thinks it's a joke. She did get kicked out, but by her landlord. She was thrown out because she has a cat. Rose found him last week and would not feel right having a home if he didn't. Blanche: I think that shows great strength of character. I like you, and I like cats. I also happen to have a room for rent, and the name is Blanche Devereaux. Rose: Why would you name a room Blanche Devereaux? Blanche: That's very good. I like a roommate with a sense of humor. As the conversation continues, Blanche just thinks Rose is being funny. By the time Rose is done talking, though, Blanche doesn't think Rose as a roommate would work out. She walks away, and as she does that, a little boy walks up to Rose. He tells her his cat died, and it looked like the cat Rose has. Rose winds up giving the cat to the little boy. Blanche watches the whole exchange. After this, she asks Rose if she would like to take a look at the room. Blanche runs through the crazies that tried to rent a room. Madame Zelda is scary. She thinks a murder happened there. As she is getting rid of her, Dorothy's Bornak and Sophia arrive. Blanche asks if they will both be taking a room, but is told Sophia lives at Shady Pines. Dorothy: No, Mother lives at the Shady Pines retirement home. Blanche: Oh, the Shady Pines. I know the Shady Pines. It's a lovely place. Sophia: It's a prison. They lock us in our rooms and force us to look like we're having fun. They take pictures for their brochure. Dorothy corrects her. She apologizes to Blanche, telling her that Sophia had a stroke. Blanche offers a tour of the house. She shows them the lanai first. Blanche: This is the lanai. It is wonderful in the summertime, especially if you like to sunbathe with your top off. Dorothy, really? Really? And the neighbors can't see in? Blanche, oh, sure they can. Sophia, the woman has slut embroidered on her underwear. They head back into the house, and Blanche asks a few questions. The first is to solve her crossword. She then asks Dorothy if she's neat. Dorothy kind of freaks out because Sophia's like, no, she's super messy and things of that nature. But luckily, Dorothy gets the room, and the day that she moves in, she gets to meet Rose. Rose, oh, it's been such a lovely day. Mr. Sunshine really gave us one of his biggest and brightest smiles. I feel like putting my arms around Mother Nature and giving her a big hug. Hi, you must be Dorothy. Dorothy, and you must be Mrs. Rogers. Rose, no, but we have a Mrs. Rogers at the Grief Center. Dorothy asks Rose her name. Rose tells her she's sorry her husband dumped her. Blanche joins them. Then the room they're going to each have becomes a question. Both have been promised the same room. Rose suggests that they flip a coin and calls tails. So Dorothy takes one out of her pocket, flips it in the air, and then when it lands on tails. So Rose gets the room. Rose says she's willing to sing to her on a night she can't sleep, and Dorothy doesn't ever want that. Blanche and Rose both help Dorothy move her things, and while walking towards the hall with the rooms, Rose knocks a vase off the table. It was one of a kind from from Blanche's grandmother to her. Rose, I'm sorry, I'll buy you another one. Blanche, you can't. That was one of a kind. Don't feel bad. I never really liked it much anyway. It's just that my grandmother gave this to me on her deathbed. She was very, very sick for a very, very long time. I loved her very, very much. Dorothy. Blanche, why don't you just grind the broken pieces in her hand? Rose feels guilty and wants to make it up to her. She invites them to her favorite restaurant, the Dairy Queen. At the kitchen table, they realize it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Blanche says she learned she was more devastating by moonlight and then tells a story. Blanche. I was wearing a long white dress and my first push-up bra, and Bobby Buck McAllister and I were enjoying a glass of punch out on the veranda when a beam of moonlight hit my cleavage. Suddenly, the band began to play. It was at that moment I realized my bosoms had the power to make music. Dorothy and Rose both look annoyed and appalled. Dorothy cracks a joke. Next, they reminisce about their first grocery shopping trip together. They wind up in the produce section and fight over how to tell if a cantaloupe is ripe. They each have their own process. Dorothy smells the tip, and Blanche thumps it, and Rose cuts a piece out and tastes it. They get to the checkout, and Blanche picks up all the tabloids from the check stand. And as the checker starts ringing things up, Rose points out that some things are not correctly priced, but then comments about Blanche's pantyhose, to which Blanche does not react well. Rose, I can't help it if I'm an honest person. Obviously, something you don't know anything about. Blanche, what are you talking about? Rose, well, you bought pantyhose in petite. Everybody can see you can't get those past your knees. Blanche, if you don't keep your voice down, I'm going to hit you in the head with this loin of pork. Dorothy has to break up a fight between the two, but when she sees the price on the loin of pork, she gets upset. All three start fighting at the checkout. They all decide to shop individually. Back at the house, everyone is slamming their groceries around. Blanche angrily asks about the Raisin Bran being in the fridge. She feels it goes in the cabinet, and Dorothy feels it goes in the fridge. Rose says they're both wrong. It goes in a glass canister. It looks pretty, and you can see if they gave you enough raisins. Dorothy feels they cannot agree on anything and that living together is not going to work. They all sit at the table. Rose starts telling a St. Olaf story about herring. Two families who controlled the herring. One wanted to pickle them, and the other wanted to put them in a circus. Dorothy cannot help herself and asks if one was ever shot out of a cannon. Rose tells her that one was, but he wound up getting shot into a tree, and no other herring would do it after that. Her grandfather, however, told her this story, and he did have some memory issues. The three all start laughing. They realize they are getting along. Blanche asks Rose what she has as she walks towards the fridge with a pink bakery box. It's a chocolate cheesecake. They are all still at the table, and they're eating another chocolate cheesecake. They decide to go to bed, but the kitchen door opens. Sylvia comes in with a knife and screams. She tells them she did it to someone at the home who was told he'd never walk again, but her stunt got him walking. The three sit back down and decide to finish the cheesecake after Sophia goes back to bed. They begin to discuss toppings for the cheesecake. I'll be right back after a quick break. Favorite quotes. Blanche. I never should have watched it. Why, that shower scene is the reason I never shower alone. Dorothy. And Goldilocks and the Three Bears is why you prefer not to sleep alone? Rose. Why would you name a room Blanche Devereaux? Blanche. I like a roommate with a sense of humor. Madame Zelda. Move in this house and you'll die an agonizing death. Sophia. The woman has slut embroidered on her underwear. Blanche. When a beam of moonlight hit my cleavage, suddenly the band began to play. It was at that moment I realized my bosoms had the power to make music. Grocer. Those are very nice cantaloupes. Blanche. Why, thank you. Dorothy. Rose, why don't you save it for The Price is Right? Dorothy. Until I met you, I didn't know people actually talk back to their Rice Krispies. Blanche. I know I've been having a very good time, and there isn't even a man in the room. Dorothy. Oh, I think this could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I enjoy these episodes that they have where they tell stories of things that have previously happened. Reminiscing is always fun, and I enjoy sitting around a table with my friends and food and reminiscing as well. Usually it's some kind of pasta or maybe something healthy. Rarely do I ever get to do it with cheesecake. But this is also how we learn about the cheesecake and how the cheesecake at the table with all the girls sucking it down. all started this because Rose has a big old sweet tooth, and she was the one who started the cheesecake tradition with the girls. It's actually what allowed them to get along and not part ways. Then we wouldn't have 7 fabulous seasons, 8 counting the Golden Palace. Oh, the stories are so adorable. Rose and the cats. Thankfully, Blanche was not allergic to the cat, and it was so sweet that she gave it to the little boy. That cat also was pretty chill. I'm not used to cats that'll just let you hold them forever and not freak out or try to claw you or bite you or whatever else. I mean, kitties get excited and they get overworked and wound up, and unless you want to get clawed, you gotta let them go. Though maybe there were many, many cats that all looked the same, and each scene time it was shot, she was holding a different cat. But then it's Rose, aka Betty White, and Betty White has a gift with animals. And for those of you who aren't aware, she's also a big contributor at the Los Angeles Zoo, and she actually still does some like actual events there as well. Let's see. Oh my gosh, Sophia writing out Dorothy that she's super messy. Sophia always cracks me up. I love the fact that she's the unedited character in this show. They use her stroke as the reason that she's unedited. But she's always direct, she's always to the point, and she always calls it like she sees it. And it really would be nice if more people were like that, I think. Because too many people are just kind of always pretending and everything else. Let's see what else happened in this episode. Oh, yes, Sophia and her complaints about Shady Pines. Those always crack me up because in most of the episodes when Sophia's out of control, at least per Dorothy's standards, she goes, Shady Pines, Ma. I can't really do B. Arthur's voice. My voice, I think, is just too high to pull off that timbre. And yeah, it's so funny. She always gets her to do what she wants when she threatens her with Shady Pines. So, yeah, she's manipulating her. She's blackmailing her. I mean, this is Dorothy's character we're talking about. And Dorothy is definitely fierce. But I do like the fact that we do get to see interactions prior to moving in. You know, like at the supermarket, and even when she comes in interviews. Oh my God, though, Dorothy's, you must be Mrs. Rogers. It's like for me, I'm familiar with Mr. Rogers. You know, won't you be my neighbor? And so instantly that reference pops in my head and it just cracks me up. And then Rose starts listing famous Mrs. Rogers. It's like, I don't know if in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood we ever actually saw Mrs. Rogers, but in real life there was a Mrs. Rogers. And I find it quite interesting that for the movie they just did, Tom Hanks, they did a genealogy thing, and he's actually related to Mr. Rogers. And that would definitely explain why they look kind of similar. Although Tom Hanks is not as thin, or, yeah, I guess that's the word thin in this case. Tom Hanks is a little broader. Yeah, there we go. Still a nice guy, though. All righty. Well, thank you so much for taking a stroll down memory lane with me and reliving episode 1, actually season 1, episode 25, because it's the season finale of the very first episode, very first season of the Golden Girls. 25 episodes in the first season. 1 season done and 6 more to go. Well, 7 if we count the Golden Palace, because I will be including the Golden Palace. All right, thanks so much for joining me, and have a great week, and stay golden.
It's been great reliving this episode with you. Please check out the podcast website, anchor.fm/I love this TV show, no spaces. You'll be able to see the show notes and also support this podcast. To check out everything I'm up to and nerding about, head over to pastasworld.com. You'll also find additional content there. Thanks for listening, and stay golden.
Thanks for tuning in to the I Love This TV Show podcast. If you would like to make a donation in support of this podcast, you can through Cash App to Pasta26MC. That's pasta like the food, the number 2, the number 6, M as in monkey, C as in cat. If you would like to sponsor this podcast or advertise on it, please send an email to podcast@pastasworld.com. As always, you can go to pastasworld.com for more information.